Greetings Earthlings, welcome to my first video on this channel. This is the look that we are going to be doing today, and I'm going to be sharing my origin story as a burlesque dancing drag performer. So pour some tea and get ready with me. I'm going to be wearing my natural curls for this look, so I just have my hair clipped up to keep it out of my face for the most part. We're going to start with a primer. So I have basically been performing my entire life. From as young as I can remember, I took dance lessons, took tap, jazz, ballet. I did my first dance recital when I was like 5. I still remember the costumes. They were like these red and white, frilly, floofy, girly costumes, and it was for a tap dance number. And I remember like the very first step that I took on stage, I slipped and I fell backwards on my ass, and I remember the audience audibly gasping, and I just got back up and I just kept going. So learned from a young age how to perform and be on stage. So I've always loved dancing. Another thing I've been doing from a young age is playing piano. Basically my parents saw me figuring out how to play the Barney song by ear on our little keyboard, and they were like, this child seems musically inclined. And so I started taking piano lessons when I was like 7 or 8, and the first cover that I learned how to play on the piano was 1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton. Granted, it was the beginner version in the key of C, so there were no sharps or flats to it, but I like to think that for an 8-year-old, that's a pretty cool thing to accomplish. So I took piano lessons probably for like 6 years until I was in high school. I briefly played piano for band in middle school, but honestly, I barely even lasted like 2 weeks. I couldn't stand it. It was a sensory nightmare. It was very loud, and when you're playing piano in like a band class, the piano is at the very front of the class and the whole band is behind you, and so there's just this constant noise behind you, which like that's what music is. Music is literally noise. But it was really difficult for me to focus because I could like the clarinet players and the saxophone players were kind of loud, and sometimes they weren't always on key, and so trying to focus on like sheet music while I'm hearing this like behind my ears, I was just constantly flinching. Like I couldn't do it, and it just wasn't my thing. However, I was really into playing piano while other people sang, and so I got into choir as well, and that was really fun. I loved playing piano for people while they sang. Honestly, that's still something that I would like to do more of. I recently got to have the experience of playing piano while people were like dancing, and it was sort of like an interactive experience, and so I'm wanting to do more collaborations. But yeah, all of that was like in middle school, and it was funny because my music teacher was kind of like conservative, and so she always wanted me to like play classical music or like, but I was always wanting to play these like pop rock covers and stuff. Like Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne or Spiderwebs by No Doubt, which honestly was one of the most complicated bass chords I've ever learned how to play. Like learning how to play the actual bass notes that Tony Canal played, but on the piano, really gave me this deeper appreciation for the bass. It was a journey. But yeah, so I didn't want to play classical music. I wanted to be a little rock and roll kid. So that was me all throughout high school, and I was always just like an artsy kid. Like I was voted most artistic in high school. I loved painting. I loved drawing. I also really loved makeup. I would go to like the makeup counters at the mall and like try to learn as much as I could, or I would take like little classes and stuff if like certain makeup artists were having pop-ups at the mall, and I just soaked it up. I was obsessed with it. I loved it. I was also one of those kids who always had their nails painted a different color each week, which right now I do not have my nails painted, sadly, but it's because I'm moving soon and I can't have them getting all messed up with cardboard and everything. But yeah, just all around, I've always been an artsy, fartsy child. Now we're gonna go in with the foundation. We got our underpainting contour done. Now we're gonna go in with the foundation. Going to spritz my sponge first. My passion for dancing continued into high school. I took jazz, I took hip hop, I even took intro to pointe for a minute in ballet, which I absolutely loved, but I wound up getting injured, which was really devastating to me. But yeah, dancing was always like one of my passions. It was something that I really wanted to be good at. It was something that I wanted to excel at, and like to this day, like it is still one of my passions and obviously like one of my favorite things to do. Everything just came alive when I was in high school. I was obsessed with Tyra Banks in high school. I would watch The Tyra Show. I would watch America's Next Top Model, which, you know, nowadays I'm aware of some of the really messed up things that happen behind the scenes at that show, but I digress. But there was one episode where they had a guest celebrity on an episode of America's Next Top Model, and it was Dita Von Teese, who is a world famous fetish artist as well as a neo-burlesque performer. And she did this workshop with the models about like how to be sensual and how to be sexy, but like how to incorporate that into modeling. And I was like hypnotized. I was just like, oh my goodness, like I want to be just like her. Like she's so confident, she's so poised. And then I went down this whole rabbit hole of like wanting to learn more about burlesque. Like I became obsessed. I was also on Tumblr during that time with like, if y'all know Tumblr, if you're a Tumblr kid, please let me know in the comments, because if you know, you know. But like I would follow like vintage lingerie blogs. I would follow burlesque blogs. There's a piece of cat hair stuck to my face. There we go, I got it off. And I just knew like deep down, like I would pay attention in class, but like deep down I was like, when I grow up, I want to be a burlesque performer. And I couldn't really tell anybody that because I was in high school, and I knew that if I told anybody that they'd be like, what's wrong with you? Like, I grew up in such a conservative area, and so I knew that if I did, that the adults in my life would be concerned or they would be judgmental, and I just didn't want that kind of energy in my life. So I really kept that fantasy to myself for a long time. But then another thing that I saw in high school was a commercial for something called Flirty Girl Fitness. I don't even know if that's like around anymore. It was one of those infomercials for like exercise classes, and it was sort of like jazzercise, except like sexy. And then they had a pole component to it. So it was like you could learn pole dance for fitness, but learn sexy pole dance choreography. And I was like, wait, that's a thing. Like pole dancing exists. I could do that. Which again, that was something that like I didn't go around telling people because I knew that they would freak out. But pole dancing was another thing that like I just knew that like once I had the opportunity to get into it, like I was gonna get into it. And so I would go on YouTube and I would watch pole dancing videos, and I just thought that they were like so graceful and gorgeous, and I wanted to dance just like them. And I even like did some research, And I even looked online and found out that there was a pole dance studio in my city. Actually, there was like a couple of them. And so I was like, okay, you know, I'm going to be 18 in like a year or two. As soon as I turn 18, birthday present to myself, I'm signing up for pole dancing classes. I had some additional awakenings in high school, one of them being Rocky Horror Picture Show. If you know, you know. Rocky Horror is such a rite of passage for queer, artsy, theatrical weirdos. And so that movie blew my mind. And so this combination of inspiration that I was gleaning between Dita Von Teese and Rocky and pole dancing and all of that, I was like, I want to be the pole dancing love child of Dita Von Teese and Dr. Frankenfurter. And I don't know how I'm going to make that happen, but that is my deepest goal as an artist. And I'm not going to tell anybody about it, but maybe someday, something like that can happen. So once I graduated high school, I finally started taking pole dancing classes. Not gonna lie, I was a little bit awkward at first, which anytime you try something new, it's gonna be a little bit awkward. But over time, I kept going to the classes and I started noticing myself like improving. And I remember when I like first started to actually like get some of the movements, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I think I could actually be kind of good at this. And the other thing that I really love about pole dancing is that it makes you so strong. It makes you so strong so fast. And that is probably one of the other really rewarding parts of it, is that like if you go consistently, you will see results. And so I started to make friends there. I started to really like develop my skills, and I just fell in love with it. Then my world expanded even more in college because I started going to the Rainbow Club on our campus, and I learned that the Rainbow Club would have these yearly drag shows as part of Pride Week on campus, and then also like a summertime fundraiser to like raise money for the committee that would basically help put like, you know, like mental health resources for queer people and access to gender neutral bathrooms on campus and safe space trainings and things like that. And so when I learned that they would do drag shows, I was like, wait, you're telling me that I can make up a drag routine and like perform it? What? And so I was so excited. I choreographed my first ever drag routine, and it was a group routine. Oh my gosh, I wish I had video of this somewhere. But it was to the song I'll Make a Man Out of You from the Mulan soundtrack. And that was also the first time that I learned about cultural appropriation, because, which I'm really glad, because the faculty was like, okay, like you can do this song, but like please don't make it like racially charged, because this is like a predominantly white school and we don't want to like do anything messed up. And I was like, oh, okay. So instead of going with the whole like Mulan theme, instead I made it sort of like a School of Rock theme, where like I was trying to like teach these like rock and roll drag performers how to be manly. And it was the funniest thing ever. And I just had this whole like awakening about being in drag, where I was just like, this is so much fun and I feel right and I want to do this all the time. Like I felt so at home. I felt so happy. You know what? I'm not gonna worry anymore about the brows. They're sisters, not twins. You know what? And some days they're cousins, not twins. It's okay. They don't have to be totally even. But for a while, drag was just that. It was really only something that I got to do maybe once or twice a year. And all year long, I would look forward to it, and like it was all I could think about. And But that went on for a couple years of just me doing these drag shows with my college, like as an alumni for fundraisers. But y'all know how I mentioned being obsessed with Rocky Horror, right? So I learned that in my city that they had Rocky Horror Picture Show screenings on Halloween and on like other holidays and stuff, and they would do these fun themed shows. And so I went to one and it was awesome. They did the whole thing where you have like a shadow cast that dresses up as the characters and acts out the movie in front of the screen. And when you're in the audience, you can dress up and sing along and do the time warp and yell stuff at the screen and throw props, and couldn't throw toast, but there were noisemakers and cards. Actually, no, they put toast inside of plastic bags, and then we would throw the toast that way. It was a good time. But after the show, I went and introduced myself to a bunch of the people there, because obviously I wanted to get involved. All right, now I'm going to start this cut crease. And so I decided to audition for the next show that they were having, and I decided to go big and audition as Frankenfurter, and I got it. I loved playing Frankenfurter, and honestly, I was like really good at it. It was funny because people would be like, how are you so good at imitating him? Like it's a little bit scary. And now that I look back, I'm like, oh, it's the neurospicy, because that movie was one of my special interests for sure, but I would just like spend so much time listening to the soundtrack and singing along to it in my car and imitating all the eyebrow movements that Frank does. And so this is actually the Frankenfurter necklace that I would wear when I would do performances, which I think will be fun for the finished look, since we're going with like old school burlesque vibes. Is that so? Oh, my cat wants to. Hi. Hi, little man. I had so much fun doing Rocky Horror Picture Show screenings. It really was a rite of passage for me. I met so many cool people. I just got so many cool opportunities from being a part of that scene, and made so many fun memories, because at the end of the day, it was me doing something as an artist that I'd always wanted to do but didn't think I would have the opportunity to, and there I was doing it. The other cool thing about being involved in Rocky Horror was that it led me to a lot of other opportunities, including burlesque. A lot of people who were in the scene were also doing burlesque performances, and so I would ask them about it. I would watch some of their performances. I would go to shows, and eventually I had the opportunity where I reached out to a show producer and I was like, hey, I have this idea for your show. Can I do it? And he was like, yes. And it was a horror themed burlesque show. And so I decided to do an act to Hip to Be Square by Huey Lewis and the News, dressed up as a femme version of Patrick Bateman with the axe and the raincoat and everything. And it was just absolutely like a thrilling experience. I was immediately just obsessed. I was like, oh, this is fun. Like, I just feel kind of like I was cut out for this. Like, I was meant to do it. And the other cool thing was that before I went to do that performance, I kind of had this thought in my mind of like, wouldn't it be so cool if somebody in the audience or someone backstage like noticed me and really liked my stuff and wanted me to collaborate with them or perform with them or something like that. And that was exactly what happened. Literally right as I got off stage, somebody was like, yo, that was amazing, and I want you to come to my show. And it was somebody who was a burlesque producer. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this really just happened. Like this really just happened. And so I started out stage kittening for this burlesque troupe, which is kind of how you get your foot in the door in the burlesque world. The stage kitten is the one who sets up props in between each act, and then they also pick up clothing after each act and gather tips and things like that, and basically help the show run smoothly. So I kittened for a couple of months, and that was fun. And then I started performing as a member of this troupe. And it really just felt like dream come true. And every month we would do these different themed shows, and I would like bring these like really creative ideas. So while I'm doing burlesque, I'm continuing to make connections at the pole dance studio I'm dancing at, and they would have these student showcases, I think like at least once, sometimes like twice a year. And so I decided to bring something a little bit different. I brought a burlesque act and mixed it with pole dancing. And shortly after that, the owners of the studio wanted to talk with me after class one day, and they were like, we're obsessed. We want you to be a teacher. And so I became a pole dance teacher, and I taught there for 3 years, and I learned so much. It was like I learned so much as a dancer, but then I also learned so much from teaching people, and it was just like such a rewarding place to be. I taught pole dancing, mostly like beginner level pole dancing, but like some intermediate stuff too. And then I taught burlesque classes, and I also taught chair dancing classes, like acrobatic chair tricks and things like that. It was so much fun. And so I was just really living this like wild life of being a burlesque performer and a drag performer and a pole dance instructor and like all this cool stuff. However, all good things have to come to an end at some point. I got to a point in my life where I was really burnt out for a couple of reasons, mostly just trying to survive capitalism. At that time in my life, I basically had 3 or 4 jobs. So it was like I had these like daytime jobs, but then I also had all of my art hustles and like my art gigs. And it's just way too much. Like it's just way too much for one person to be doing. And so I had this major burnout moment, which sucked. I don't recommend it. And things just kind of started to get unhealthy for me. And I realized that I needed to make some drastic changes in my life if I still wanted art to be a part of it, but I needed to change the way that I was going about it. So I had to make a tough decision, and I left the troupe that I was in, and I also left the studio that I was working at. And I basically just spent a good period of time focusing on my mental health and my wellness. You know, all those things that fall to the wayside when you're trying to do too many things at once. And I really simplified my life for a while, and I just took a long break. I think I took like at least a good 6 months off. And eventually I did start performing again, but like I was not doing it on a monthly basis like I had been at the time. I also realized that I was putting a lot of time and energy in my art because I was trying to kind of like make it my full-time job, but that wasn't sustainable for me, and it was just causing more and more burnout and feeling of resentfulness, and that's not how I want to feel about my art, like, at all. You know, I want my art to be something that energizes me and gives me a feeling of purpose, and burnout is something that happens to all artists, and you really gotta learn some lessons from it if you want to get back to doing art. And so I didn't want to lose these art forms. I definitely still wanted them to be in my life, but I just had to go about it a different way. And I realized that letting go of this feeling that like I have to do it full time was really healthy, because I realized, like, you know, I'd rather be a well-rounded person. And so I just spent some time, like I said, I spent like almost a year just kind of focusing on other hobbies, focusing on mental health, just focusing on like my health in general. The big realization that I had was like, I still want to be a performing artist, but I'd rather perform once in a while or even just a few times a year and do art that's really high quality than do something because I feel like I have to, or because someone's expecting something of me and I like don't want to disappoint them or something. And I'm really glad that I took that time to be solo. And when I did do performances during that year off, that exploration of being solo, I had a lot more fun. I just felt more aligned with what I was doing, and it was just coming from a much healthier place. So after this much needed year off, I am bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I'm just so excited to get back into performing again. And then 2020 happened. Y'all, enough said. Like, yeah. So during that time, I was like, well, I'm just gonna get into other creative outlets. So in 2019, I bought myself a theremin as like a Black Friday present to myself. And I'd kind of like messed around with it, but I hadn't really like taken anything seriously or like made a whole lot of progress with it. And so during the pandemic, I had all this free time. So I started going online and finding theremin instructors and YouTube tutorials and videos. And so I started learning how to play the theremin. In addition to playing the theremin, I also started playing piano again, which made me really happy because I kind of stopped playing after high school. And so playing piano made me really happy. It reconnected me to this outlet that I really missed. And I started playing songs by ear again, which was really fun. And over the years, I've been getting a lot more into painting again too, and just really focusing on doing painting for fun and for play and creativity and not feeling like I have to monetize it. And I think that's a really important thing as an artist, is making sure that you have ways to engage with your creativity that don't always involve having to show something to the world or having to prove something or trying to make money off of something. And so the pandemic really helped me find a healthier way to reconnect with my creativity and find ways to explore and express it. I also read The Artist's Way during that time, which on my other YouTube channel you can watch some of the videos about it. I did wind up finishing it, I just didn't record all the videos of every single chapter, I don't think, but I definitely recommend that if you're a creative person or you're an artist who feels stuck and you want to reconnect with your creativity. Eventually, I wanted to get back into the drag scene. After vaccines rolled out, things started kind of like opening up again, shows started happening again. I slowly started getting back into performing and seeking out new opportunities. And then one day, a certain performer slid into my DMs and was like, hey, I want to see you performing at these clubs. Like, I want to see you getting involved with the scene. And I was like, I wish, like, I don't know how. And then they were like, sign up for this show. It's like kind of like an amateur night, and it's for new talent. And let me know when you get booked for it, and I'll go out and support you. And later on, that person wound up becoming my drag dad, and they adopted me into their drag house. So now I have a drag dad, I have a drag bro, and a drag cousin, and we're all really supportive of each other. And now, oh my gosh, I feel like everything happens in threes. I'm like, now I've been performing in my local drag scene for about 3 years now. And once again, it's just, I've connected to so many awesome people. I've had so many cool opportunities. I've brought so many ideas to fruition through my art, through performance. And I'm just really happy to be a part of it. And I've found really great community too. And that's been a big part of art for me, is building community and building connections. I'll let you guys watch while I do the lips, but I'm going to speed it up because I don't want to talk while I'm doing my lips. So here you go. Okay, lips are done. One time I met somebody at a show and we're friends now, but they straight up thought that I didn't like them because they were trying to talk to me while I was trying to do my lipstick backstage. And I'm like, no, you're fine. Just please don't talk to me while I'm trying to do my lipstick. It requires focus, even more focus than winged eyeliner. All right, now we're gonna do lashes and we're almost done. So yeah, fast forward to now, and I am a burlesque dancing drag thing. I really enjoy doing a combination of drag and burlesque and combining elements of both of those performance styles into my art. And I've been lucky enough to also do some theremin performances. I've done some piano performances, and I'm hoping to do more. And honestly, this YouTube channel is another big creative venture for me because, as I mentioned earlier, that makeup was one of my big loves when I was in high school. Makeup is such a huge part of drag and performance art, and I was realizing when I was doing sort of like creative journaling and things like that nurturing my makeup practice is a huge part of my self-care as an artist. And another creative dream that I've had for a long time is to do YouTube. And so combining those two things has really been an exciting start for me. And I like it because it's pushing me out of my comfort zone and it's having me try new things, but it's also stacking different things that I'm passionate about, which is key when you're an artist and when you're a creative person. Okay, not gonna lie, I'm so glad that I trusted the process because let me tell you, there were a couple of moments where I was putting this look together where I was just like, I don't know how I feel about it, but I trusted the process and I'm glad I did. And, you know, every time I get that moment of what the hell am I doing, you just gotta keep going. I don't think that feeling will ever go away. But honestly, it's like if you let that feeling get to you of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is turning out well, you're not going to create anything and you're not going to grow. So you kind of got no choice but to trust the process, girly pops. But yeah, that's my origin story as a performing artist. Every video on here, I'm going to be talking about different stories, different topics. If there's anything specific you would like me to chat about in future videos, let me know in the comments below. Or if there's any looks you think I should try out, you can post those in the comments as well. And thank you so much for watching. I'm really excited to be doing this. This was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to make more in the future.